Have you ever judged someone by their title, by the uniform they wear, or the job they do? Have you ever looked at a person and decided you know their entire story based on a single, superficial detail? We all have. It's a shortcut our minds take. But sometimes that shortcut leads us off a cliff. This is a story about one of those times. It's a story about the quiet ones, the overlooked, the people who stand in the background, holding the world together while no one is watching. It's about Sarah Jenkins, a woman whose rank was measured in cardboard boxes and shipping labels, until the day it was measured in something else entirely. She worked the graveyard shift in the cavernous, climate-controlled heart of Innovate Dynamics, a tech giant teetering on the brink of either revolutionary success or catastrophic failure. Her official title was Night Shift Logistics Coordinator, a fancy way of saying she sorted packages, managed server deliveries, and made sure the river of incoming and outgoing hardware flowed smoothly. She was a ghost in the machine, a silhouette against the humming racks of data, her presence marked only by the neat stacks of inventory and the faint scent of coffee in her small, windowless office. Her uniform was a simple gray polo shirt with the company logo, faded from 1,000 washes. She kept to herself, her eyes, the color of a stormy sea, missing nothing but revealing little. To most, she was just Sarah. Part of the furniture. But not to Mark Renshaw. To Renshaw, the company's head of corporate security, Sarah was a symbol of the lower rungs he had so triumphantly climbed. He was a man built from a blueprint of corporate ambition, sharp suit, expensive watch, a voice that was permanently set to condescending. He saw people not as individuals but as positions on an org chart. And Sarah's position was at the very bottom. He and his team would often saunter through the logistics bay on their rounds, their laughter echoing off the concrete floors. "Still counting boxes, Jenkins?" Renshaw would call out, a smirk playing on his lips. "Don't strain yourself. We need you sharp for the big deliveries," his subordinates would chuckle, a chorus of sycophants. Sarah would just nod, her hands never ceasing their work, her expression unreadable. She didn't offer a defense, nor did she show any anger. Her silence, her utter lack of reaction, seemed to infuriate Renshaw more than any retort could have. It was as if she was operating on a different frequency, one his brand of authority couldn't reach. The company was holding its breath. Project Chimera, a revolutionary AI integration platform, was hours from its global launch. It was Innovate Dynamics' Hail Mary pass, the project that would either make them legends or bankrupt them into oblivion. The tension in the building was a physical thing, a low hum of anxiety that vibrated through the steel and glass. Mr. Harrison, the CEO, hadn't slept in 3 days, his face a mask of strained exhaustion as he paced the executive suite. Down in the belly of the beast, Sarah felt it too. But for her, it wasn't anxiety. It was a familiar feeling, the calm before the storm, the deep breath before the plunge. She just finished her final inventory check, the rhythmic beeping of her scanner a steady counterpoint to the frantic energy pulsing through the building. As she prepared to sign out, the world went red. The piercing shriek of the primary security alarm ripped through the silence, followed by the strobing flash of emergency lights. The world outside Sarah's small office turned into a chaotic ballet of panic. On the monitors that lined the walls of the Security Operations Center, or SOC, a dozen floors above, red icons blossomed across the schematic of the building like a deadly virus. It wasn't a fire drill. This was real. Mark Renshaw stormed into the center of the room, his voice a theatrical boom. "Lock it down. I want every access point sealed. Alpha team to the server farm, Bravo to the R&D labs. Go, go, go." His team, clad in tactical-style uniforms that were more for show than function, scrambled to obey. They were well-drilled in protocols, in the checklists that defined their world. But this wasn't a checklist situation. This was fluid. This was intelligent. And it was a step ahead of them. In the glass-walled boardroom overlooking the chaos, Mr. Harrison watched, his knuckles white as he gripped the back of a chair. His executives murmured nervously, their confidence, so absolute in the boardroom, evaporating in the face of a genuine crisis. He saw Renshaw barking orders, but he also saw the flaw in it all. It was pure reaction. There was no strategy, no anticipation. They were plugging leaks on a dam that was already collapsing. Renshaw's voice crackled over the comms, tight with a frustration he was trying to mask as authority. "We have an unauthorized entry in Sector Gamma. They've bypassed the magnetic locks." A moment later, another voice panicked. "Sir, they're not in Gamma, the signal was spoofed. They've tripped the pressure plates in the Delta corridor, near the Chimera mainframe." Renshaw swore, his face flushed. "Divert Bravo team. Double time." He was playing whack-a-mole, and the mole was winning. The attackers were ghosts, using the building's own security systems against itself, creating diversions, feints, and dead ends. They were professionals. Down in the logistics bay, the alarms felt different to Sarah. She didn't run. She didn't panic. She stood perfectly still, her head tilted slightly, listening. Not just to the sound but to the rhythm of the crisis. Her shift was over, she could have walked out an emergency exit and gone home. But she didn't. That wasn't who she was. Her eyes scanned the bank of secondary monitors in her office, the ones that showed the logistics-level camera feeds that Renshaw's high-tech SOC often overlooked as unimportant. And she saw it. A flicker. A single frame of corrupted video from a camera near maintenance shaft 4B, a shaft that ran directly beneath the Chimera mainframe room. It was a route that wasn't on any of the official schematics, a forgotten relic from an older version of the building's blueprints. The attackers weren't using the corridors, they were moving through the building's veins. She saw a brief image of a boot, military grade, and the glint of sophisticated equipment. They weren't just hackers, they were operators. Her training, buried under years of civilian routine, surged to the surface. The muscle memory of threat assessment, of tactical analysis, took over. The world slowed down, the chaos resolving into clear patterns of cause and effect. She saw their objective, their path, and their exit strategy laid out before her like a map. She walked calmly to a young, terrified security guard who was fumbling with his radio near the loading dock. "Tell your boss the breach isn't in the Delta corridor," she said, her voice low and steady. "It's a feint. The real target is the mainframe's coolant infrastructure. They're coming up from the maintenance tunnels below." The guard stared at her, his face a mixture of fear and confusion. "Who are you?" he stammered. "Just tell him," she said. But before he could even raise his radio, another guard, a senior one loyal to Renshaw, stepped between them. "She's the box sorter," he sneered. "Go back to your office, Sarah. Let the men handle this." Sarah looked at him, her stormy eyes holding his for a long moment. She saw the dismissiveness, the casual condescension. She saw that her words were hitting a wall of institutional arrogance. She simply nodded and stepped back into the shadows, but she wasn't retreating. She was repositioning. She knew that in any operation, there comes a point where the chain of command breaks. And you have to build a new one. Mr. Harrison had seen enough. He pushed through the door of the boardroom and strode onto the floor of the SOC, his presence silencing the low-level panic. He walked straight past his COO and CFO, his eyes fixed on the main screen, where Renshaw's tactical map was a mess of contradictory information. "Mark, what is your status?" Harrison's voice was dangerously quiet. "Sir, we have it under control," Renshaw blustered, sweat beading on his forehead. "A team of highly sophisticated hackers. We're tracking their digital signature and cornering them." Harrison's gaze was withering. "You're not cornering anything. You're chasing shadows. You've lost control of your own building." His eyes swept the room, a desperate search for competence, for a single island of calm in a sea of chaos. And then he saw her. On a small, secondary monitor, he saw a feed from the logistics bay. He saw Sarah Jenkins. She wasn't panicked. She was focused. She was speaking quietly to two young interns who had been trapped by the lockdown, and she was pointing at a schematic on her own screen. With calm, precise movements, she was directing them to manually engage the emergency locks on a series of server racks that housed the backup power grid for the entire sector. It was a small action, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of the breach, but it was decisive. It was proactive. It was a move that anticipated the enemy's next step, cutting the backup power to create total darkness. In that moment, Harrison didn't see a logistics coordinator. He saw a commander. He saw an unnatural stillness, an aura of authority that had nothing to do with a title or a uniform. It was something innate, something forged. While Renshaw was shouting, she was acting. While his team was running in circles, she was holding a line. Breaking away from the knot of his useless executive team, Harrison walked across the polished floor of the SOC, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. Renshaw, seeing his boss moving, hurried to intercept him. "Sir, I'm about to redeploy." Harrison didn't even look at him. He waved a dismissive hand and continued walking until he stood before the bank of secondary monitors, looking down at the grainy image of Sarah. He keyed the intercom for that sector. "You." The woman in logistics, his voice boomed through the speakers in the bay. "Stay right where you are." He turned to a nearby technician. "Get her on my screen. And get me a direct audio link." Now a few keystrokes and Sarah's face filled a large monitor in the center of the SOC. She looked up, not at the camera in her office, but seemingly through it, directly at Harrison. There was no surprise in her eyes. It was as if she'd been expecting his call. "What do you see that they don't?" Harrison asked, his voice cutting through the noise of the room. Every head in the SOC turned. Mark Renshaw's face contorted in disbelief. Sarah didn't hesitate. Her voice came through the speakers, clear and devoid of emotion. "Your team is chasing a digital ghost. The intruders are not hackers, they're operators. At least 4 of them. They used a spoof signal to draw your security to the Delta corridor, while they ascended through maintenance shaft 4B. Their target isn't the data. Not primarily. They're planting a cascading failure virus directly onto the Chimera mainframe's hardware. They plan to trigger it remotely after they exfiltrate. It will not just wipe your data, it will brick your entire infrastructure. You won't recover." A stunned silence fell over the SOC. The level of detail, the tactical certainty in her voice, was chilling. Renshaw finally found his voice, sputtering with indignation. "Sir, this is absurd. With all due respect, she sorts packages. She's watching too many movies. My men are professionals." He was cut off by a frantic voice over the comms. "Sir, we've lost the mainframe coolant system. It's a hardware override, we're locked out." A second voice, moments later. "We have a new breach alert. Sublevel 3, near the primary power conduit. That's nowhere near the Delta corridor." The alarms on the main board shifted, a new cluster of red icons flashing in the precise location Sarah had indirectly identified as the next logical step. The intruders weren't just bypassing security, they were setting up their exit. Renshaw's face went white. He had been played, perfectly and completely. Harrison's eyes never left the monitor displaying Sarah's face. He saw the grim confirmation there, the look of someone whose dire predictions had just come true. The trust he had placed in his high-priced head of security, in the entire system he had built, shattered in an instant. He was standing on the deck of a sinking ship, and the captain was a fraud. He looked at Renshaw, his face a mask of cold fury, and then back to the screen. To the quiet woman in the gray polo shirt, surrounded by boxes. "Forget him," Harrison said, his voice resonating with finality. "Tell me what to do." Sarah's eyes met his through the camera. For the first time, he saw a flicker of something beyond calm assessment. It was the look of a dormant power being awakened. "We can't fight them head-on," she began, her voice taking on a new cadence, a new authority. "Your team is outmaneuvered and tactically inferior. We have to use the building against them. Seal all vertical shafts above sublevel 2. Reroute emergency power from sectors Alpha and Beta to the sector they're in now. Overload the circuits. It will plunge them into total darkness and kill their comms, but it will leave our fiber optic lines intact. We'll be blind, but so will they. And we know the terrain better than they do. Renshaw, recovering from his shock, was apoplectic. Overload the circuits. That's insane. It violates every safety protocol. It could cause a fire, fry millions of dollars of equipment. Harrison turned to him, his eyes like chips of ice. Your protocols have failed, Mark. Your equipment is about to be worthless anyway. He turned back to the screen. Do it. The technicians, after a moment of hesitation, began typing furiously, their loyalty shifting in real time from their direct superior to the disembodied voice of the logistics coordinator. The building groaned as power grids were rerouted. Lights flickered and died in entire sections of the complex. Renshaw, his authority crumbling before his eyes, could only watch in impotent rage. He saw his career, his reputation, being dismantled by a woman he wouldn't have trusted to file a report. He couldn't let it happen. He stormed across the room and stood directly in front of the monitor displaying Sarah's face, blocking Harrison's view. His face was a mask of pure fury. I don't know who you think you are, he snarled, his voice trembling with rage, but this is my operation. You are a civilian. You have no authority here, no clearance, no right to give these orders. The remaining executives had gathered at the entrance to the SOC, their faces pale, watching the drama unfold. The entire crisis had now focused on this single point of conflict, the entitled executive versus the quiet woman in the basement. It was a standoff between a title and a truth. What is your rank here, Jenkins? Renshaw spat the words, his finger jabbing at the screen. Tell me. What gives you the right to countermand my command? The room was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the servers and the distant, muffled clang of a fire door being sealed. Every eye was on the screen, on the calm, unassuming face of Sarah Jenkins. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her gaze was steady, her posture relaxed, but her presence filled the entire room. She looked past Renshaw, her eyes locking once again with Harrison's on a nearby monitor. Then she answered the question. Her voice was flat, a simple statement of fact, but it landed with the force of a battering ram. My rank, she said, a slight pause hanging in the air. In my last job, it was Navy SEAL commander. She held Renshaw's stunned gaze. And your team isn't walking toward the power conduit. They're being herded. They just walked into a kill box on sublevel 3-inch silence. A profound, absolute silence fell over the Security Operations Center. It was a silence so deep it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Renshaw's sneer froze on his face, then melted away, replaced by a slack-jawed expression of utter disbelief. The word commander echoed in the void, dismantling his entire worldview in a single, devastating blow. The other executives stared, their minds scrambling to reconcile the woman who sorted their mail with the title she had just claimed. A Navy SEAL commander. It was impossible. It was unbelievable. And yet, in the chilling certainty of her voice, in the tactical brilliance she had displayed, it was the only thing that made sense. Harrison's face was a study in revelation. It all clicked into place, the calm, the quiet competence, the strategic mind that saw 10 moves ahead. He had hired her himself, years ago. He remembered her resume now. 10 years of distinguished military service, listed simply as U.S. Navy Honorable Discharge. No details. He had assumed she was a supply officer, a desk jockey. The humility, the deliberate downplaying of her past, was a testament to a character he could barely comprehend. He looked at the blustering, humiliated man in front of him, and then at the quiet professional on the screen. The choice was not a choice at all. It was an imperative. He stepped forward and placed a hand on Renshaw's shoulder, not in comfort but in dismissal. Get out of the way, Mark. Then he addressed the entire room, his voice ringing with newfound conviction. You heard her. She's in command now. Everyone in this room, every guard in this building, you follow her orders. No questions. Is that clear? He was met with a chorus of stunned but immediate, yes, sirs. The balance of power had shifted, utterly and irrevocably. A technician patched Sarah's voice through to the building-wide security channel. Her voice, no longer just a calm suggestion, was transformed. It was crisp, efficient, and radiated an authority that no one dared to question. "This is Jenkins," she began. "All security personnel, listen up. Bravo team, you are compromised. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. I want you to discharge your sidearms, make it sound like a firefight, and fall back to access point Charlie. Create a bottleneck. The intruders think you're trapped. We're going to make that trap real." Her orders were a cascade of precise, unconventional tactics. She used the building's HVAC system to flood certain corridors with a deafening roar of air, disorienting the intruders and masking the movement of her own people. She used the emergency lighting systems to create strobing effects in key hallways, inducing vertigo. She turned the state-of-the-art corporate headquarters into a weapon, a maze that she controlled completely. She wasn't just directing traffic, she was conducting a symphony of chaos. From her small office, surrounded by shipping manifests, she was a ghost in the machine, fighting a battle with information, architecture, and psychology. She moved the few loyal guards like chess pieces, anticipating the intruders' every reaction, turning their aggression and training against them. Within 15 minutes, it was over. The 4 operators, professional mercenaries armed with military-grade equipment, found themselves isolated, disoriented, and systematically cornered in a service basement, trapped between 2 sealed hydraulic doors. They surrendered without a single shot being fired in earnest. The threat was neutralized. The multi-billion-dollar Project Chimera was safe. As the police and federal agents swarmed the building, Mr. Harrison made his way down to the logistics bay. He found Sarah not in her office, but by the loading dock, wiping grease from her hands with a paper towel. She had just finished manually securing a final relay box. She looked up as he approached, her expression as calm and unreadable as ever. In the aftermath, the story of the night spread through Innovate Dynamics like wildfire. The quiet woman from logistics was no longer invisible. She was a legend. Mark Renshaw was fired before the sun came up, a disgraced footnote in the company's history. 2 weeks later, the building had found a new equilibrium. The fear was gone, replaced by a strange, new sense of respect. Mr. Harrison called Sarah to his office, the one on the top floor with panoramic views of the city. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk, a chair usually reserved for board members and billionaires. "The head of corporate security position is yours, of course," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "Name your price." "The job is yours." Sarah looked out the window for a long moment, then turned back to him. A small, thoughtful smile touched her lips. "Thank you, sir. But I'm not a security chief. Running patrols and checking badges, that's not my skill set." Harrison looked confused. "But what you did, what I did," she interrupted gently, "was about understanding the human element. The enemy's and our own. That's where you're vulnerable. Not in your firewalls or your cameras. It's in your people. You have hundreds of employees who walk these halls every day. They are your best security system. But you have to train them, trust them, and see them. All of them." She leaned forward slightly. "I don't want his job. I want to create a new one. Let me build a department of human threat assessment. Let me teach your people to be aware, to be resilient, to be a team. Not just the guards, everyone. From the janitors to the vice presidents. That's how you become unbreakable." Harrison stared at her, a wave of understanding washing over him. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a leader, a teacher. She was offering him not just a solution, but a new philosophy. "Done," he said without a moment's hesitation. "Whatever you need, it's yours." The final scene isn't in a boardroom or a high-tech command center. It's in a simple training room. Sarah, dressed in comfortable, practical clothes, stands before a diverse group of employees, engineers, janitors, accountants, and security guards. She is teaching them about situational awareness, about trusting their instincts, about looking out for one another. She is no longer a ghost. She is seen. She is heard. And as she moves through the room, offering a quiet word of encouragement here, a piece of advice there, she wears a genuine, relaxed smile. She has found a new mission. She has found a new team. How often do we walk past the quiet heroes in our own lives? The janitor who knows every secret of the building, the librarian who holds the key to a world of knowledge, the logistics coordinator who once commanded warriors. True strength, true value, isn't contained in a job title or a salary. It's etched into our character, forged in the fires of our experience. It is the quiet competence that asks for no recognition, the hidden strength that waits for the moment it is needed most. Look around you. Who are the hidden commanders in your world? Acknowledge them. Respect them. Because when the alarms go off, they are the ones who will know what to do. Share this story with someone whose true rank you see, and remind them that their worth is not defined by their label, but by the person they are.